I'm going to reset this router so you know I've started at square one. To reset it, you're going to hold in this little reset button with a paper clip or something, and you'll notice that the number 4 starts blinking. Oh, I think I lost my spot. Okay. And eventually it will go solid, and that's your indicator that it has just reset. Then it goes off. All right, I'm going to let that reset, and then we're going to start setting up this router. To begin with, you're going to plug in a cable to eth0 and the other end into your laptop, as I have done here. The next step is to right-click on your Ethernet adapter within your operating system. Or you may have Linux or Apple, however you do it in your operating system. This is Windows. And we're going to set the IP address to 1 dot whatever. I'm going to choose 11. You can choose something else, because DHCP has not been set up on the Edge router yet. So you have to do this if you want to access the device. And that's all we have to do. Put in your subnet mask as you see it there. We don't need a gateway. Hit OK. Hit OK. Now at this point, we're going to be able to bring up the router software within our browser. You may find, as it did with me, it takes a few seconds for that to finally be available to you. All right, now we'll type in the default username and password, which is UBNT twice, and log in. All right, so to start with, we are going to say yes to the basic setup wizard. This is going to give us DHCP on eth0, which is important so that we have our internet connection established. So just follow these instructions. Say yes here. Yes, we want DHCP on 0. That's our internet connection type. And you can choose some of these settings as they may be specific. In our case, it's a cable internet service provider, so we don't need to change anything there. And we're not using a static IP. DNS forwarding we're going to leave as it is. We're going to leave the LAN ports as they are. Change nothing unless you absolutely have to on the first setting if you're not a cable provider, if yours is PPOE or something else. Okay, and I'm just going to repeat the original password and leave that for now. And apply these settings. Apply them again. Reboot. Yes, I'm sure, I'm sure. This will take a couple of minutes, maybe about 3 minutes. While we're waiting for that to reboot, since we now have DHCP, which means the internet will work on this one where it didn't before, we're now going to move this cable from 0 to 1. That's going to give us the 1.1 address that default basic setup allowed for. We're then going to take our internet service provider or our upstream router's cable and plug it into eth0, which is set up to accept it via DHCP. So that's it. Now we should be able to access the web interface at 1.1 after clearing out the Windows adapter settings. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so we're going to go back to our Windows adapter, because previously the router had no DHCP server. Now that we've went with the basic configs and saved them, Edge would have put that in place for us. So we're going to OK this, OK that. The router has since booted up. I'm going to do an IP config release renew. And let's see if we get the 1.1 that we expect to. I can see it's already come up with a network in the background, so I expect that's going to be good. All right, we're looking at this one up here for Ethernet 2, and it does show us the 1.1 has given us an IP of 38. So now I'll be able to go back here, do the same thing, and we'll get in there again. Because the DHCP server is in place, we were able to clear our Windows settings and get back to the spot. Okay. There's one thing I like to note here. The upstream router, it's important that it doesn't have an IP address, a subnet, that conflicts with whatever you're trying to do here. For instance, we've just rebooted this whole thing and we've inserted the upstream ISP feed, and it's on a subnet of 0.80, which we purposely set. You know, out of the box, a lot of these routers come as .1. Well, that's confusing if .1 is in fact the IP scheme that Edge also includes as a default. So you're going to want to manually change the upstream router to something different than what you're doing here. And in the case where you're changing the subnet to something you might prefer, the same thing applies. So just be aware of that. So that tells me at a glance that 0.80, that's my internet, that's on eth0. That is in fact the subnet of the router that we used upstream. And this is what EdgeOS is providing us through eth1. But we want to change that. We want our 1 right here to be a .89. That's specific to our company, the things we like to do with our clients. It makes it recognizable. So let's talk about how we're going to do that. So again, my laptop is currently plugged into this one, into eth1. However, if we're going to change the numbers on eth1, we are going to get disconnected because our cable is plugged in there from the laptop right now. We really now want to move over to eth2, and by the way, out of the box, eth2, 3, and 4 on the EdgeOS, on the PoE5, which I'm using, are all part of a switch called Switch 0 interface with Edge, and it's assigned. They're all assigned this gateway. So anything you plug into any of those ports, you'll automatically get an IP address, and you'll be good to go. So I'm going to move this now from eth1 over to eth2, and that will put me on a .2 network, and I'm going to verify that by getting another IP. We'll renew those IPs, and that top Ethernet should be a .2. That lets me know everything has gone predictably. So there it is right there. We're now on a .2 subnet, as expected, because we're plugged into either 3, 4, or 5. So now we can operate on eth1 without getting booted off. You can see it says it's disconnected. We'll hit Actions, Config, and we'll just change that 1 to an 89 for our purposes. You can change it to whatever you want for your own. And we'll save that. Okay, we're getting an unable to connect to the device, even though we're on 2. I'm going to try again. Oh, wait a second. It just became obvious to me. All right, we now need to change that to the 2.1 to reflect what we're logged in at on port number 3. So we'll go back in using the .2.1 up top. All right, and we can see that is reflected accurately down here. Now, we still need to deal with the DHCP server. At present, this is not going to serve us any IP addresses unless we would hard code our adapter in the same way we did when we started this process with the Edge router setup. But we're going to go in here to Services, and you notice LAN 1, which by the way is just a friendly name, but you'll notice there's already a subnet here that we need to delete because that doesn't exist anymore, and we don't want this device giving out .1 addresses for any reason at all. So we've got to delete that one so that we can add our .89 DHCP server. And there's no way to edit one of these and just change numbers. You have to delete and add a new one. All right, and then we'll enter in the following. And you'll see some of this is in memory. I'm going to call this a LAN-1.89, which is a friendly name, and it tells me what this is all about. I'm not sure what happened there. Well, as you can see, I got nailed about halfway through that. It just blew me out of the configuration altogether. Well, It turns out that I had to restart the router in order to kick this back into gear. It would not let me log back in. So I restarted the router and all was well. I didn't do anything else. So we are now going to add that DHCP server, as I was attempting to do the first time, with the following settings. And that's it. Go ahead and save what you see there. And you'll notice that LAN 189 can be a friendly name. Now this problem could have existed because I am on a Wi-Fi network. That's where I'm getting my Wi-Fi internet through this process. And it is a .89, so it could have been that muddied the water. Okay, so there's the .89 network I was hoping to set. I now should be able to get internet through that. I've got my .890 DHCP server, and I've got my .89 on eth1. That should connect the dots. So now I am going to remove the plug from eth2 and put it back into eth1, which should be a properly working business network now. This is coming from the ISP router upstream. This has now been programmed as a .89 subnet. Let's see what we get. I'm going to knock off the Wi-Fi. Because I simply shouldn't need that anymore. Okay, I just had an epiphany. I noticed something that it failed, and it failed while I was off camera. It wasn't until I named the description here, which up till now I've thought to be only a friendly name. Whatever that name, you can make it anything you want to be, but it needs to match what is in services on the DHCP server. I will tell you, I've rebooted both my computer and the router and tried everything I knew in the meantime and couldn't get this to work. Matching those two names up might have just been a coincidence that I saved it and the router picked up the save when it didn't pick it up the previous time, but it's probably a good idea to match those things up anyway. So that's it. So I have since plugged back in. I am in port 1. I am running right now an internet connection based on the .89 nomenclature. Okay, so now let's talk about this second one. I'm going to basically repeat the procedure. Start at the dashboard. Now, in the case of ports 2, 3, and 4, with the EdgeOS PoE5, they are all part of a switch. You see here the switch 0, that is the interface name. Well, that covers 2, 3, and 4. So we're going to configure the switch right here. I'm going to give it the subnet 0.99. And since I'm not plugged into the switch ports right now, I am plugged into the 8.9. That won't have any effect on anything. Okay, now why did it keep the other one? I better take another look at that. Okay, I'm not sure why it kept the other one still. I'm not in the point 2 switches. I am in port 1. Should have had no effect unless it just needs to save some settings on a deeper level, and in the process of that it boots you off. I have verified that I am getting a 0.89 based IP address from the Edge router, so that's further proof that the configuration is right. I'm going to try this with a different browser. I've run into this before. Boom, straight in. So no settings changes. Somehow the cache caused that to hose in Chrome. However, it didn't take, so we're still looking at the old setting here. Going to back in, change that to 99. See if it does what I tell it to do. Same situation. Why would that be? All right, it blew me out again. So evidently, when you save something in here, at least where the switches are concerned, the router's got to do some kind of a reset or reboot or soft reboot, and it blows you out. So you can expect that kind of behavior. Now we're going to go over to services, and I'm going to change that First, you have to delete it, actually. That's pulling that out now. And then we'll add it again. And we'll call this switch 2, 3, 4, which are the Ethernet ports. Okay, and I'll put in the 99 in there, which is the IP that I'm going to use, the IP range. So we'll change that to 99. Hopefully it won't blow me out again. I'm going to copy that and use that as again the friendly name on the dashboard. And I'm not sure if there's any rhyme or reason for that, but I'm going to do it anyway. See if it boots me again. Well, it didn't boot me that time, so not even predictable. Okay, so that gets me a 99. I'm now going to move my cord from eth1 over to eth2. That's done. Okay, so right now we have .89 from when I was on the first port. Now we'll do another IP config, and that should show us 99. And it does show us 99. And we are currently on the internet. So now 89 and 99 are configured. Comes up a little faster in Firefox. Okay, so that's working like it's supposed to. I don't think we have anything else to cover here. I'm going to go down into the System tab. Boy, I got to tell you, it's a little bit of a frustrating process, so it's important that you who are watching this understand it. After making that last change, the network stopped working. I couldn't get into the user interface. I ended up having to, in this particular instance, I restarted the router again. I powered it off, powered it back on. Excuse me. And I'm trying to think. No, I did not restart the computer this time, but I did have to repower and wait that out before I was able to get back in. But I didn't make any new changes, so that's important to note. The changes worked, but after each one of these changes, it seems if things go wonky, just repower the router, let it reset itself to factory, and well, not to factory, to acknowledge the new settings that have taken place, perhaps clear some of its own cache. It's just part of the process. So as you can see here, I'm able to ping out. I do have an IP address of .99, so my switches are now working. The .89 we know was working. They're reflected down here. There's the port number 3 that I'm currently plugged into, and there's the IP gateway that we set up there. So those are your keys to setting this up. And I don't know, did I use this same nomenclature on the front? I did, just to be on the safe side. I made that the same. Don't know if it needs to be or not, but. And I hope that saves you as a viewer some of the brain damage I went through in getting this guy set up. I've spent a couple of days off and on working with tech support through chat sessions, and I was determined to have this down on such a level that I could document it, that it was repeatable, because frankly, I like these devices. They've been rock solid, they've got great flexibility, they're a good price point. And I've used them for clients that have servers, and they've just done what they're supposed to do over and over again. So don't let this setup issue dissuade you, but they do lack these kinds of videos that would make it more obvious what happens, what should happen, the fact that you do need to reboot these devices. And but once you get it this way, it stays this way. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.